Good afternoon, everybody. So what I'd like to do in my brief time up here is talk to you about signals to systems aligning higher education with the infrastructure economy. So let me start with a simple question. What if the biggest challenge we face is not a shortage of jobs, but a failure to align our systems with the work that is already emerging? Because that's what the data is telling us. The World Economic Forum projects that by 2030, the global economy will create 170 million new jobs, while displacing 92 million jobs. That's a net gain of about 78 million jobs. Now, I recognize that's dispersed across the globe, and yet 22% of all roles will be fundamentally reshaped. Nearly 40% of the skills required in those roles will change. So let's be clear. This is not a story of job loss. This is a story of job churn at scale. Tasks are changing faster than roles. Roles are changing faster than institutions, and institutions are changing slower than the economy. That gap is what I would call a systems alignment failure. A system in the economy. So I saw this firsthand when I arrived at Arizona. A few years prior to my arrival, the institution had built its strategy around continued enrollment growth. Their plans were to expand even a new campus in partnership with the University of Arizona. Then the enrollment environment shifted. The recession had hit, demographics had changed, the partnership dissolved. And what they were left with was a system designed for a world that no longer existed. By the time I arrived, enrollment dropped from over 70,000 students to under 50,000 in 2013. Facilities became underutilized, resources were misaligned. It was not because of a failure of effort, it was a failure of alignment. What ultimately stabilized the institution was not a traditional strategic plan, it was a shift. We began aligning programs to real workforce demand. We centralized and scaled online education. Those became the growth areas, not because we predicted them perfectly, but because we responded to the signals. So, if the system is out of sync, the question becomes, how do we read what's actually happening in real time? Because the leaders who are most effective right now are not the ones with the best plan. They are the ones who can read the system. They understand the swells, the long-term shifts on the horizon. They see the currents, the forces already in motion, and they anchor to the stars. The guiding principles helping them navigate uncertainty. But here's the shift. We now have tools that allow us to translate those signals into systems. Data gives us real-time visibility. Artificial intelligence helps us detect patterns and anticipate change. And infrastructure allows us to respond, read the system, then align to it. Now, if that's true, then it requires a different kind of leadership. For decades, we built our institutions around planning, static programs, fixed pathways, delayed feedback. But that model assumes stability. And we are no longer operating in a stable environment. What's emerging instead is something different. Real-time signals, adaptive systems, continuous alignment. Leadership is no longer about planning the path. It's about navigating in real time. So what does that look like in practice? It looks like this. At the foundation, infrastructure. Buildings, energy systems, connected environments. On top of that, an intelligence layer, artificial intelligence, analytics, real-time data that turns insight into action, and at the top, the learner experience. But there's another shift happening here, one that we don't talk about enough. Since you've been here, we've been talking a lot about it. We're not just preparing learners for jobs anymore, we're preparing them for control of the systems that run the world. What's emerging is what I would call the infrastructure class, the rise of the technician economy. Not people who simply use technology, but people who understand it, operate it, and respond in real time. Because in this economy, if you can't read the system, you're not shaping the future, you're being shaped by it. And that's the real shift in front of us. We are not just redesigning programs, we are redefining who succeeds in this economy. Because the future will not be divided by who has access to education, but by who understands the systems that shape it. And our responsibility is to make sure our learners are inside that system, not outside looking in. We already begun to see what this can look like. Through our partnership with Train Company, we leverage the 4 superpowers, AI, mobile, cloud, and the Internet of Things, to develop what we call a virtual living learning lab. What that means is we took and converted our whole entire campus systems into energy, facilities, building management, are no longer just operational aspects of our college. They became the instructional environment for learning. Learners are working with real-time data from the systems that power the institution. They're not learning about the future of work, they're learning inside it. So reframing the campus, not just as a place of instruction, but a platform for learning. Learning is no longer separate from the system. It moves from the classroom into a real-time application. The campus becomes a living learning lab. And if that's true, then the future of higher education is not about keeping up. It's about redesigning our systems to align with the world that is already here. Thank you.